What it is, what it do, cyber world. It is your girl, the one, the only, Ash Said It. AshSaidIt.com, AshSaidIt.com. Welcome to the Ash Said It Daily Podcast Show. I appreciate you guys for all of your love and support. Over 1,700 episodes and 500,000 streams worldwide. None of this is possible without you guys, so I thank you so very, very much. And yes, as we're leaving summer and we're into fall, the kiddies are back to school and some of us are back to work. We have to be more mindful, with our intentions and how we're going to accomplish these amazing goals within the next year. So today, I have with me an MD doctor, Stanford School of Medicine professor, physician. He's just amazing. Best-selling author and mindfulness expert, Dr. Greg Hammer. Hey, Dr. Greg.
Great to be with you, Ash.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So, Dr. Greg, I want to talk about intention, all right? How intentional living can really change our whole life.
Well, I'd love to chat with you about that as well.
Yes. So
intention is, so important because our minds are hardwired for certain things that veil our internal happiness, which is our true nature. But that true nature can be veiled by two ways of thinking. One is that we have a negativity bias. We tend to remember and hold on to the negative thoughts and experiences and forget about the positive ones. And the other thing that veils our happiness, apparently, is our obsession with the past and the future. So it's difficult for us to be present. But the good news is that we have the capability of rewiring our brain, changing the way we think. That's called neuroplasticity, and we really have that throughout all of our lives.
Right. Wow. So what would you say is the difference between intention and goal?
Intention is something that is happening right now in the present moment.
Okay.
Goals are something that are off in the future, and those are fine as long as they don't distract us or lead to disappointment. So, for example, in the book, I tell the story of how I like to bike ride, and I live in such a beautiful place on Stanford campus, surrounded by beautiful hills, and take my bike off the wall. And my intention is to enjoy every moment of the ride, to really focus on each rotation of the pedals, to feel my muscles working. My goal is to get to the top of the hills and have a beautiful view of the Pacific Ocean. So I ride, and I'm just really enjoying the present moment of the ride and the way my body feels and the fresh air and the beautiful vistas on the way up through the forest. But by the time I get to the top, the fog has rolled in, as it commonly does around here, and I can't see the ocean. I can barely see 100 feet ahead of me. But am I disappointed? No, of course not, because my intention was to enjoy the ride, and I certainly did, and I have, even though my goal wasn't met. So I think that's one example of intention being with us in the present moment and goals being off in the future.
I like that. Now, your book, Gain Without Pain, the Happiness Handbook for Healthcare Professionals. Where did the inspiration come for this particular book?
That's a good question. I got on board an organization at Stanford called WellMD several years ago, shortly after it formed. And the reason that the group was convened is to address the problem or pandemic, if you will. I hate to use that word, given the greater pandemic, but there is a pandemic of burnout among healthcare providers. So this group was convened in the medical school to address burnout among physicians. So I've been involved in that for several years, and I started speaking about burnout and what I think are the paths toward curing it. And meanwhile, I got invited to give a talk about that, and then one thing led to another, and pretty soon I was talking about it quite a lot around the U.S. and around the world.
Yeah.
And then I had some sabbatical time, so I thought, well, how can I get the message out? As I was sort of refining the message, I just decided to commit my sabbatical time to writing a book in order to enhance the message and enhance its distribution. And so I did, and it just kind of flowed forth, and now I'm working on my third book.
Okay. Sounds like you've been very busy in helping us find our way, with all that is happening right now, with everything in the world and everyone that's dealing with so many different aspects of it. Mindfulness is so important. I really feel it's a huge part of what's going to help us succeed, and
Absolutely. Well, as I said, I think that our true nature is happiness.
Yeah.
And what we need to do is unveil that, and we have the power to do this by rewiring the way we think. And it's all about being present. If you think about all the happy times you've had, the most wonderful times, they've all involved absorption into the present moment. So whether it's walking through the forest and marveling at the tall trees with the leaves kind of fluttering in the breeze and the sunlight filtering through the canopy above, and you're just there and not at all worried about what happened yesterday and obsessing over sort of regretting what you said or what you did or didn't do, or casting your thoughts into the future where fear and anxiety reign. You're just right there. You don't have to think about it. You're present. And really, when you think about your happiest moments, whether it's having an intimate connection with a loved one, or hiking in the woods, or riding your bike to the top of the hill, it's really all about being present. And, I call it presence practice. Mindfulness is a word that I think kind of is so used so commonly. I think some people get a little bit turned off, but it's really all about being present. And one of my heroes, John Kabat-Zinn, who's probably the grandfather of mindfulness in the United States, or at least one of them, defined mindfulness as awareness of the present moment on purpose, non-judgmentally. So I think the key features are being present, having intention or purposefulness, and dropping judgments and becoming non-judgmental. And in gain is non-judgment. So I think those are really the key ingredients.
I like that. So how does one use the GAIN method in order to set intention?
It's really quite simple, Ash. And, as an educator, I've certainly realized, and you probably have too, that we learn by taking baby steps. So we learn in small increments through repetition. So while it's great to have a vacation a couple of times a year where you unwind, and after a few days you feel like all of the thoughts of the past and the future sort of gradually falling away, and you can finally be present, and then pretty soon you start worrying about going back to work when you're coming out of that middle of the vacation. So I think what really helps us be present is a daily practice where we take small steps, but we do it every day. And if you do that, if you have the right daily practice, and it doesn't have to be time-consuming, I think what you'll find out is that when you look back over the last weeks and months, you can realize how far you've come just with really expending very little effort every day. So the GAIN practice is initiated in the morning with as little as 3 minutes devoted to a contemplation or a meditation over the GAIN elements. So we get up in the morning, we do our morning hygiene, and then we find a comfortable, quiet place to sit in whatever position suits you. It could be sitting on the corner of your bed or in a chair or on the floor if that's better. And we get into our breath. So we really notice the air passing through our nose into our chest and our body expanding, maybe to a count of 3, a slow count of 3, and then pausing for a few seconds, maybe also to a count of 3, and then just letting that breath go without any effort to a count of 4. And by really noticing the breath, I think we accomplish 2 things. One of them is it brings us to that present experience of the breath. And also, it slows down our breathing and slows down our heart rate and allows the adrenaline in our body to decrease. So when we're kind of sinking into that experience,
Right.
we begin a contemplation of the gain elements. And so that starts with gratitude.
Yeah.
And we all have so much for which to be grateful.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I was diagnosed with a malignancy about 10 years ago, and now I'm fine. I take a magical immunotherapy medicine once a day, a pill, and I feel great. So my first gain element is gratitude for this day, for being alive today.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something we can all be grateful for. And I have a list of other things for which I'm grateful. And then we move to acceptance and acknowledge that pain and suffering are also part of life as much as joy and celebration. And if we actually open our hearts as we sit with our breath and we have our eyes closed, we actually picture our heart opening and bring in something painful closer and closer until we really merge with it, till it's in our heart and there's really no separation. And when we do that, we often notice that the pain is really not as great as we thought when we were resisting it. There's a formula in the book, which is that suffering equals pain times resistance. The pain is inevitable, but we can lower the suffering by accepting and lowering our resistance. So we contemplate that, and, I have a very personal story for which I always have as my number one thing in acceptance, but we all have our own special pain. And then we move to intention, and that's the purposefulness. And so I often think about 3 good things that happened to me the day before. And when we do that 3 good things practice before we go to sleep, for example, it's actually been a study at Duke University where they've shown in tens of thousands of people who have enrolled online in this 3 good things practice that simply thinking of 3 good things before we go to sleep helps us sleep better and it makes us feel happier. And so I go through those 3 things during the eye of intention, and then remind myself to be positive rather than negative and to appreciate what I have instead of focusing on what I don't have. Right. And then finally, the contemplation of N for non-judgment. And what I do is I actually think of the Earth suspended in space, like one of those beautiful NASA images that we've all seen. And the Earth is neither good nor bad. So we don't have to judge it. It simply is what it is. We didn't create it. We didn't make it the way it is, and we're not really going to change it much. So let's just accept the Earth for what it is without labels of good or bad, without judgment. And when we get good at this practice, Ash, we can actually turn toward ourselves and drop the self-judgment, which I think is most difficult. And then we just go back to the breath for a few cycles and slowly open our eyes, and we're ready to go out into the world.
I agree with that, Dr. Hammer, 100%. Myself, as I've been kind of shuffled throughout the country in the last 2 years, I was a flight attendant for about 3 years, and I was stationed in about 5 different cities. It was nerve-wracking. So when I got back to Georgia, that's my home base, and I had to really get into a natural routine, just like as you're saying, of mindfulness, meditation daily, practicing just all of my gratefulness and things that I know that I'm so thankful for on a regular basis. And it's made a huge difference. It's made a colossal difference in my life. So I really
absolutely
appreciate that. So, Dr. Hammer, let everyone know where they can get your book.
Well, the book, which is Gain Without Pain, the Happiness Handbook for Healthcare Professionals, is on Amazon. So you just put in the search window Gain Without Pain and my last name Hammer or my name Greg Hammer. It'll show up, or you can go to my website, which is greghammermd.com, lowercase greghammer.com. There's a lot of media there and things people might enjoy, and also access to the book there.
Okay, cool beans. Dr. Greg, thank you so much for coming through today. We definitely appreciate you just sprinkling some knowledge and sprinkling some wisdom on us. We absolutely appreciate that.
Oh, it's great to be with you, Ash, anytime.
Not a problem. And I thank each and every one of you guys. Thank you so much for all of your love and support. Keeping in mind, anyone to tell you that you can't do what you want to do. You look them square in the face. You tell them, don't believe me. Just watch. Watch what I do. Watch me make it happen. Watch me make history. That's what we're doing this for, the history books. Social media is nice, but real life is so much better. Until next time, you guys.